Walt Disney had a lifelong love of trains. And it all began when he was just 4 years old. His father bought a farm in Marceline, Missouri. The young Walt loved the rural life and was to see many steam locomotives running through town. His time on the farm was to influence him in later life. In 1910, his father sold the farm and moved the family to Kansas City. Walt got a summer job on the Santa Fe Railroad, selling drinks and magazines to the passengers, whilst feeding his passion for trains. Walt Disney was to make many train journeys in his life while trying to set up his own animation studio with his friend Works. It was when a contract for a character called Oswald, the Lucky Rabbit, went bad that Walt Disney was to make the most important train ride of his life. While on the train returning from this disastrous meeting, his greatest creation was born: Mickey Mouse. With the success of Mickey Mouse, and later with his first full-length animated feature, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Walt was soon feeling the pressure of running a big studio. He often thought back to his days on the farm in Marceline and the steam locomotives. It was sometime before Christmas 1947 when he told his sister Ruth, "I bought myself a Christmas present I wanted all my life, an electric train set." News soon spread throughout the Disney studio that Walt had set up the train layout in his office. Ward Kimball and Ollie Johnson, two animators at the studio, turned up at Walt's office to see the train layout. Walt turned to Ward and Ollie and said, "I didn't know you were interested in trains." Ollie Johnson told Walt he was building a miniature steam train for a backyard railroad. Disney invited Ward Kimball, Disney Studios' most advanced railroad buff, to make the trip to the 1948 Chicago Railroad Fair. Kimball owned not miniature, but real locomotives.
The first vacation that Walt Disney ever took in his life, he did with me, and it was 1948 at the Chicago Railroad Fair. And the nurse told him, he says, "You're working too hard. You're coming down here on Saturday and Sundays and inspecting storyboards. You got to relax." So he called me up and he said, "This is Walt. How'd you like to go back to the railroad fair?" I couldn't believe it. First of all, he never took time off. And so when I really knew it was Walt talking, I said, "Sure, sure." In Arizona, the conductor came to Walt and says, "How'd you guys like to ride in the cab of the diesel locomotive?" And so we climbed up into the cab, and Walt got to pull the whistle for all of the little crossing signs. And here again, he was like a little kid. He'd never done anything like this, and we had the time of our lives riding that diesel through the state of Arizona on our way to Chicago.
It was the single most important moment in Disney's growing enthusiasm for miniature trains. Such was Walt's growing enthusiasm for trains that he had a machine shop set up at the studio to build a miniature locomotive. He came into the machine shop to learn how to operate all the machine tools and made numerous parts on the milling machine. With the help of staff, Walt completed the locomotive, which he called Lily Bell in honour of his wife. It had its first steam up on December the 24th, 1949, on 300 feet of track on the studio soundstage. Walt and Lillian Disney lived in Holmby Hills on a 5-acre lot at 355 North Carrollwood Drive. One of the attractions of the Carrollwood lot was that it had room enough for a 1/8 real-size railway. In 1950, Walt built the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad in the backyard of his home. The first run on the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad took place on the 7th of May 1950. The 2,615 feet of track included a 46-foot trestle bridge and a 90-foot long tunnel under his wife's flower bed. He had a barn built where he could monitor and remotely control the switches on the track. The barn also served as a workshop and a place to relax with friends. When Walt's Holmby Hills home was sold after his death, his daughter, Diane Disney Miller, recognised the importance of the red barn where her dad loved to relax. Walt spent many hours in the barn, not only working on his trains, but thinking about new projects. She contacted the Carrollwood Pacific Historical Society, who had the barn moved to Griffith Park, Los Angeles, where it is now open on the third Sunday of each month. Walt Disney always loved trains, and he was one of America's greatest rail fans. Through his own initiative and personal financial resources, he was responsible for preserving real steam railroading for generations to enjoy it with Disneyland and Walt Disney World in Florida.
No